What are some changes either from a legal or regulatory standpoint or even a tech standpoint that you'd like to see that would do a better job at keeping private info actually private?
To me, it's two things very quickly, which are like, how do these large entities that are publicly traded allowed to sell my personal information without my approval in bulk to other companies? That's like the government needs to regulate that and, make it mandated that you can't just sell bulk personal information to companies. Right. Like that to me is number one. Number two is Google should not be allowed to publish this openly on the internet. Like they should not be able to publish a phone number or an address on the internet openly. Like stop those two things and like the majority of this problem goes away.
Yeah, no, it's astonishing. You can look up, you just see how a relative's doing or whatever, and you Google them, and like one of the first things you get is their whitepages.com, listing or whatever, and you're like, yeah, it's like grandpa,
these people search sites, they're really just marketing engines, right? I mean, they're just buying data from whoever. They don't have a lot of rigor.
Yeah, they're not necessarily like Snidely Whiplash, like twisting their mustache and cackling. They're just, this is a really good source of income, I suppose, for them. So it's very profitable, right? Because their traffic is free because it's SEO, and then they can charge, whatever, $20 a month, and it's, there's low overhead, and they're not putting a lot of investment in tech to really ID proof, people and so on. Right. Now, if I were to give you the magic gavel and you could just sort of regulate your sort of dream legislation around this into law, what would it look like in terms of like, because we have such a patchwork system of law and regulation around the internet anyway, largely. I mean, we could go all day on that about, the actual tech literacy of people in our legislature. But what would it look like in terms of like really sticking? Because, there's so many regulations like GDPR and stuff where it's like, well-intended, there's ways around it, what have you. So what would your sort of like ironclad version of this look like?
I think one of the number one things that has to happen with the regulation is that I, as a consumer and a citizen of this country, I have to have the right to own my data.
Yeah.
Like in America, you don't actually own your data. The company that collects it owns it. Yep. And it's sort of like shame on you if you gave it to that company. So I think it has to start with just change of philosophy, which is like, I need to be able to assert my right that this is my data and you can't do anything with it without my permission. To me, that solves it right there. Right? Is if I own the rights to my own data. But unfortunately, you give your data to Amazon owns it. You give your data to Netflix owns it. Right. You give it to some online sweepstakes thing, they own it and they're selling it, and they put in the terms and conditions that by giving them your data, they can sell it. It's
on page 47 of the terms and conditions.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just, I think it's got to start with that kind of fundamental foundation that like in America, Americans own their data and you can't do anything with it unless you have their permission.
How about some free cybersecurity training resources for you and your team? Just go to infosecinstitute.com/free to get ebooks, training guides, and more than 100 cybersecurity training courses, all free for CyberWork listeners. Go to infosecinstitute.com/free and start learning crucial new skills today.